Excellencies, colleagues, distinguished guests, it's very nice to see you here. I'm honored to be here today on behalf of UNICEF at a time of great urgency for the children we serve. I want to thank the Secretary General Guterres and Deputy Secretary General Mohammed for galvanizing global action to recover learning for millions of children and to transform education for every child. Your leadership is truly critical. No one here is under any illusions about the magnitude of the challenge ahead of us. We know that the world was already facing a learning crisis before the pandemic, but the pandemic has made a bad situation so much worse. We are teetering on the edge of a learning catastrophe. Imagine a classroom of 30 10-year-old students. So much promise, so much enthusiasm to learn. But now imagine that more than 20 of those 10-year-old children are still unable to read a simple sentence on a blackboard. Imagine that many of them may never learn to read, or do math, or go any farther in their education. Imagine how many of them will just drop out and never learn the skills they need to transition from the classroom to employment, to independence, to leadership in their communities and their countries. We don't really have to imagine any of this because the evidence that it is beginning to happen is undeniable, and the potential impact on children's futures is enormous. Put in strictly economic terms, unless we take action to recover learning, this generation of students is at risk of losing $21 trillion in potential lifetime earnings, the equivalent of 17% of today's global GDP. No country, no child can afford that. And that statistic doesn't begin to describe the less tangible benefits these children will miss out on. The joy of learning, the self-respect that mastery can engender in a child, the optimism and hope for the future that learning can inspire. Anyone who has ever seen children attending makeshift schools and refugee camps, or girls receiving informal education in places that don't permit them to attend school, or children with disabilities, the most excluded of all, in class with their peers, has seen that the joy and enthusiasm for learning, even in the most challenging circumstances. Excellencies, we owe it to those most vulnerable children to act before our window closes and that enthusiasm dims. If we don't want children and young people to bear the cost of this pandemic for the rest of their lives, we need to invest in learning recovery, and we need to do it now. Not enough countries have fully focused on the urgent need for the ambitious learning recovery plans or allocated adequate funding to address learning loss. That lack of investment and action will leave millions of children behind, ill-equipped for the future, and societies will pay the price too in slower growth, widening inequality, and growing fragility. As we prepare for the summit in September, UNICEF is calling for greater focus, increased funding, and rapid action in 5 key areas. We need to reach every child and retain them in the classroom. We need to assess whether they are learning. We need to prioritize teaching the fundamentals of all future learning. And we need to invest in remedial support to help children catch up and progress. We need to develop stronger systems to support children's mental health and well-being. And in everything we do, we need to focus greater resources on reaching the most excluded and marginalized children. They have been left behind for far too long. This is a pivotal moment. Every speaker has said that. The need to act has never been more evident. And at this moment, there's a spotlight on education and the learning crisis. So partners from every sector are motivated and mobilized to support the effort. Educators, families, students, and young people are working collectively to demand and drive change. We need to make the most of this moment, and shame on all of us if we don't. There is not a person in this room whose life was not changed by the opportunities their education helped make possible. Don't all children deserve that same opportunity? Education is the key to unlocking the unlimited potential of this entire generation of children. Let's work together, not just to talk, but to put that key in their hands. Thank you very much.